Hey everybody, hope you're doing well. We're going to continue to look at the attitudes that Jesus tries to teach us, first of all, to help us to know God better, but also to help us to experience greater happiness and greater joy in this life. We're looking at the section of attitudes where it relates to our thoughts or our attitudes towards God. I want to ask you if you've never been to California and you had an opportunity to go on vacation, what would be at the top of your list to see? Maybe some people would pick Disneyland. Maybe some people would pick Hollywood. Maybe some people would pick the beaches and going to the ocean. So there'd be a lot of things, especially in Southern California, to come and see. And whenever we have guests come from out of country or out of state, they always have these things on their list that they really want to see. That if they came all this way to California and all this way to Los Angeles, and they didn't see these things, it would have been a wasted trip. And if it costs money, you save up for that thing, or if it takes time, you make time for that thing. But could you imagine coming to a place where you are dying to be at the beach and see the ocean, or you have been waiting your whole life to go to Disneyland or see the stars on Hollywood or something like that, and then you go to that place and you don't see that thing? Or if you had a friend and they went to those places and they didn't see those things, and they came back to school and you said, hey, what did you do this summer? And they said, I went to California. And you said, oh, did you go to the beach? Did you go to Disneyland? And they said, no. And you would just be thinking, why would you go all that way and not see that thing, right? That thing that is so iconic for that place. I mean, so many things in life, we forget that there are ways to see God. And if we want to see God, this beatitude, this verse we'll look at today, helps us understand what Jesus says about seeing God. So let me just ask you this question. When would you say the last time was that you saw God? How long ago has it been? What was going on in your life at that moment when you did see God? Because this is the key of life, I think. If God really exists, if we truly believe there is a God and we believe all of the attributes about him, all of his characteristics, that he is creator, that he is savior, that he is Messiah, wouldn't you want to see God? I mean, parts of the Old Testament, the relationship of the people of God hinged on them seeing him in some way. They didn't necessarily always see him in physical form, but in seeing him work, in hearing him, in seeing him through his acts, through his people, there were many ways where people got to see God or signs of God and knew that he existed. And that deepened their relationship and reliance on him. And what about you? What about me? If God is truly who he says in the Bible, wouldn't we want to see him more? Wouldn't we want to be with him more? Wouldn't we want to see his power more? And this beatitude that Jesus talks about in Matthew chapter 5, verse 8, is hinged on this aspect of a relationship with God. In Matthew 5:8, Jesus says, blessed are the pure in heart, for they will see God. What's interesting about the word pure is it is used in two different ways in the Bible. So it comes with two different feelings. One is to be purified through fire, meaning when fire burns certain things, it burns off the bad elements or the weaker elements, and it will really purify the stronger or the core element. So there's that aspect in life that is a biblical analogy, that there are things in our lives that need to be burned off. And when those are burned off, then we are purified. The other aspect of this pure in heart is to be refined by pruning, which is another illustration or image that we see in the Bible. It's the idea of pruning off certain branches so that all of the nutrition could go to the branches that are going to bear fruit. It actually is a healthy process for a plant to grow, to be pruned. There are certain plants that even need to be pruned all the way back in certain seasons so that in the other seasons they come back very rich and very full. That part of the health of the plant is actually getting pruned and not just letting it grow, because there are branches or leaves or segments of the plant that are not going to be healthy, and they will take the nutrition away from the healthy areas. So that aspect of being purified by fire or being purified by pruning is this idea of being pure in heart. Is that has our heart been refined? Has our heart been pruned? And all of those link to having a relationship with Jesus, to saying, yes, Jesus, I want to follow you. Will you work in my life? Will you work in my heart so that I could be more like you? And so the way that we see God is by having this relationship with him and by allowing him to work in our hearts. Because remember, God looks at the heart. In 1 Samuel 16, verse 7, if you remember the story, this is when the prophet Samuel is going to pick the next king of Israel. And he's at David's family, and David's the youngest person. And he looks at all of the brothers, the older brothers of David, and they're strong or they're handsome or they look capable. And God keeps saying, no, 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 no. And Samuel keeps saying, why? Look at him. Why? Look at him. Why? Look at him. And in verse 7, God says, because I look at the heart. I don't look at the outward things that people look at, but I look at the inward things. I look at the heart, and the heart matters the most. And the heart is what's going to help us see God. That when our heart truly becomes pure through allowing God to refine us, to purify us, to prune us back, then we get to see God. Then our heart is poised about seeing God. So the thing we have to keep in mind with this attitude is if you loved God, wouldn't you be happiest seeing God? It's just like those illustrations of little children who are just so pure in heart, and their mom or their dad comes home from a trip or comes home from work, and they hear the car pull in or the gate close or the door open, and they just start running to see their parent or their grandma or their grandpa or their favorite uncle or aunt, and they're just running and they just leap into their arms. That's the picture that we get, that if we truly want to see somebody, we're waiting for them, we're longing for them, we can't wait till they come, and when we get to see them, we just run towards them. So the question has to be, when was the last time that we saw God? And if it's been a long time, maybe the place we need to look is our heart. Because Jesus said, blessed are the pure in heart, because what will happen is they'll get to see God. And the purer our heart is, the greater our ability is to see God. God bless.